Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Thursday evening. I hope you all are doing well. Had a couple of little days off this week whilst there was no football going on, or at least no decent football anyway. Not that Everton play particularly decent football, but you know what I mean. So I thought we'd have a couple of days just to refresh, recharge, get ourselves ready for the upcoming Merseyside derby at Anfield. We will of course be previewing the Merseyside derby at Anfield tomorrow evening, so don't forget to join us for that one. But I thought we'd come back with just a little bit of a news roundup live stream. There has been a couple of bits of news over the last sort of 24, 48 hours or so that I thought it was worth sitting down and having a bit of a conversation about in, of course, preparation for that big game tomorrow. But before we get into any of that, I want to talk to you all about a brilliant new app that I have found myself constantly picking up and using called FanHub. So if we switch the screen here and we move over to the little phone graphic, as you can see, this is FanHub. FanHub is a fantastic free app for all your footballing needs. As you can see there, the homepage has got various different options on it. You can go on to discover. Obviously, when you sign up, you put your details in, you put your football club in, you can choose your league, whether you're Premier League, Championship, Scottish League, etc., etc., and then you can choose your preferred football club and obviously begin to engage with other fans of that football club. You can also go onto the news tab and have a look at the latest news surrounding your football club. A couple of podcasts on there as well. If you go over to the Premier League, you can change that, as I said, to any of the divisions in the country or to any of the teams in the country as well. So, for example, if I wanted Bournemouth news, I can pretty much get any news on Bournemouth Football Club within a click of a button, really. Not that I particularly want Bournemouth news, but I might have done 2 weeks ago before we played them. Also, a fantastic feature that we're going to be using in tomorrow's preview and all other previews going forward this season is the Predict Your Lineup option. As you can see there is a blank screen. You can move different players into different positions, and you can, of course, pick your lineup that you believe will take the field in the next game. This game obviously being the Merseyside derby. I'm not going to spoil it too much because obviously we'll be doing that in tomorrow's video, but I thought that was a really, really cool feature as well. Another fantastic feature of FanHub is that you log all of your games that you've been to this season. So as you can see, I've been to 4 games, 4 home games, only 1 stadium visited. The total miles there will calculate how many miles you've travelled to see your football club based upon your home location. So even if you don't live in Liverpool and you travel to Goodison, you can put your location where you live and it will calculate the miles that you've travelled. It will show you how many goals you've seen for your team, how many goals you've seen against your team, wins, draws, etc., etc., etc. So it's a fantastic, brilliant new app that I've, as I said, downloaded in the last couple of weeks or so and really, really, really began to engage with and, find really, really interesting. There is a link at the top line of our description. You can sign up completely for free. You can download the app completely for free, and there is a golden ticket code in that description, as you can see here, which is the UBP. So it's THE and then -UBP. If you put that code in, it saves you waiting to be able to use the app because there's quite a big catalogue of people wanting to use the app. But if you log in, if you create an account, if you put all your details in, it will ask you for a golden ticket code, and if you put that code in, that is in the description that I've just showed you on the screen there, the UBP, then you can get on for straight away, instantly, and you can start to have a look round what for me is a fantastic application. As I said, we will be using it for our predicted starting 11 tomorrow, and for every other game we'll be using it for our player ratings after the games as well, and we'll be of course engaging with it an awful lot more. So get on there and give us a follow as well. Let's build a little community over there. I don't want this to just be a sort of download this app please, because I want you you to and then will never ever use it. I want to build a community over there. There's leaderboards, there's all sorts of things you can do there to, see how far people have travelled to certain games, see how many games people have attended. You can also get rewards for attending games as well. You get rewards for checking in at stadiums. So if you were going to Anfield on Saturday afternoon, you can check in at Anfield and you will build up towards rewards to eventually be able to exchange them for things like pints, I believe, and various other different things at football grounds. So go and check out the FanHub app. It is the top link in the description, as I said, completely free, and that golden ticket code will get you on there straight away. And I can't wait to use more of FanHub in the future. Obviously, starting with tomorrow, it will make the predicted starting 11s a lot more interactive, and also I want you to get on FanHub and I want you to send me your predicted starting 11s for the Merseyside derby, because I feel like there will be a lot of different sort of opinions and a lot of different people choosing different starting 11s. Mine, I'm going to pick based upon what I believe the manager will pick, but if you want to pick what you would prefer, then get on there, send me them, follow us on there, and I'll follow you back straight away, and I'll be able to obviously to look through all of your starting 11s and stuff like that, which will be absolutely brilliant to do. Let's build a community over there, and yeah, let's have some fun, because that's what life is all about, isn't it? Top line of the description, as I have just mentioned. Anyway, let's get into some of the latest Everton news and rumours. So we have heard, as always, a lot of noise regarding the 777 takeover. It doesn't seem to be ending this, does it, in terms of the constant media attention that this is getting and the constant noise. And there's no surprise about that. Listen, Everton Football Club are a huge football club, one of the biggest in this country, one of the biggest, in the world, and ultimately the way this football club has been ran, the way this football club has been treated, the way this football club has been managed over the last, 30 years, really. But certainly from a media point of view, the last 6 or 7 years, it's been nothing short of an absolute disgrace and nothing short of an absolute, devastation. So therefore, anything about Everton Football Club, anything negative, anything remotely questionable that comes up is all of a sudden plastered all over the newspapers. Now, I absolutely can't wait for the day when we read an Everton headline in the newspaper or on the internet, on social media, and it's an actual positive headline. It's something positive about the football club. It's something positive about the ownership. It's something positive about the management. But we certainly aren't at that stage now. We did hear a couple of rumours over the last 2 days or so suggesting that the takeover of Everton Football Club by 777 Partners is in doubt due to the Financial Conduct Authority or Financial Control Authority not receiving the documentation that they have requested. This was rubbish quite quickly by a couple of sources. Sky Sports News reported earlier on today Everton's proposed takeover by 777 Partners is proceeding as planned. They have confirmed all documents requested by the Financial Conduct Authority in relation to the purchase of the club have been submitted despite reports to the contrary. We also had a report from BBC reporter Shamoun Hafiz, who of course is quite a reliable source, often pops up with a lot of reliable news and information. He has said reports saying that the 777 Partners takeover of Everton are in doubt are wide of the mark. The deal is still ongoing and the talks with the FCA are continuing. 777 Partners have provided the historical information requested. So for those of you that maybe don't know or are a little bit confused, the documentation that is being referred to in these articles and these tweets is, of course, the proof of funds, the proof that, 777 can provide to the Financial Conduct Authority and the Premier League to be able to prove that they have the funds to be able to buy Everton Football Club from Farhad Moshiri. A lot of those reports over the last few days were suggesting that those documents don't exist because those funds don't exist, and therefore the deal is in jeopardy of falling through. TalkSport reported 777 Partners' £550 million takeover of Everton is in danger of falling through over doubts about how 777 are financing the deal, and that obviously was all rubbished by, as I said, the BBC, Sky Sports News. Paul Joyce and Martin Ziegler also reported the amount that Everton have loaned from 777 Partners has risen to £40 million. The loan is being used as working capital for wages that Everton's income cannot cover. The loan to Everton can be converted to equity if the takeover is approved. So this sort of touches on something that I spoke about a couple of months ago on I think it was a Tuesday afternoon or a Monday afternoon. I sat there in my girlfriend's and I'd done, I think, about a 40 minute video just talking about the state that Everton Football Club are in at the moment, because you always hear and we always discuss constantly every week about how bad things are at the football club, how poorly the football club is being ran, how how dangerously close to oblivion we've been, floating for a number of years. But it doesn't actually quite settle in and sink in until you read things like, Everton spent £3 million in the summer despite recouping £40 million. The rest of that money that Everton recouped has gone into the daily running of the football club. And then you read things like this, the amount that Everton have loaned from 777 is £40 million. That has risen. So it wasn't originally £40 million, it's risen to £40 million, and the loan is being used as capital for wages that Everton's income cannot cover. So, Everton are now having to lend money from the potential new owners in order just to pay the wages of their staff and their players, over the next coming months or so. Yeah, it is a worrying situation, isn't it, at the moment? And again, I always say this whenever I talk about, the takeover, or I talk about 777, or, I'm a 25-year-old kid from Walton in Liverpool. I didn't go to university. I finished school and went straight into work. I don't know the littlest thing about business, or about equity, or about takeovers, or about millions of pounds, or about how you can lend millions of pounds and then convert it into something else so you haven't actually lent it. I don't know anything about that. I'm a football fan. The reason I started the Mighty Blues wasn't to sit down and in-depthly, analyse Everton's finances and Everton's income and Everton's capital and how much Everton have loaned. It was to sit here after a game of footy and tell you whether I thought we were shite or whether I thought we were boss. That was the reason for starting this YouTube channel. And ultimately, when you have a fan channel and when you are in this sort of stream of work, I suppose you could call it, or in this stream of sport, you almost need to be involved in the other stuff as well. You almost need to be knowledgeable and clued up on the finances, or if an article is in the news because Everton have lent a certain amount of money, you need to understand what that means and why that is, and whether that's a good thing, a bad thing, whether it's an article that is truthful and we should be worried about, or whether it's something that is, packed with lies and misdemeanors and something that we should probably ignore. And ultimately, I've been doing this 5 years now. And 5 years ago, in 2018, when I did my first instant match reaction to Everton's 2-2 draw with Wolves on the opening game of the season, Marco Silva's first game in charge, I was then a 20-year-old Evertonian who wanted to talk about Everton after the game, to decide whether or not, to give my opinion on whether or not I thought we were good or we were shite. 5 years later, I'm now a 25-year-old Evertonian who wants to sit down after the game and give you all my opinion on whether I thought we were good or we were shite. But unfortunately, as I said, the more and more you were involved in this, the longer it goes on. And it doesn't help being an Evertonian as well, because a lot of football clubs and their fans maybe wouldn't have to talk about this sort of stuff. Maybe this stuff would be dealt with in the background. Maybe this stuff would be, spoken about very minimally because it's not in the news, or it's not happening a lot, or it's not, it's not abnormal compared to the way other football clubs are ran, whereas Everton very much is an abnormal case and an abnormal situation, and therefore it's got us all talking about this. So, yeah, as I said, with the whole 777 stuff, it very much seems at the moment that everything you read in the news about 777, everything that is posted on social media, everything that is posted in newspapers or, on websites, etc., is all negative. In fact, I don't think I've read a article yet which has painted 777 in a particularly good light. I've read articles that have defended them based upon allegations that they've been levelled against them previously, but I don't think I've actually read an article that has spoken in a positive light about the owners or the new owners and what they've done elsewhere. And maybe that's genuinely because they've not done very much positive elsewhere, and there's a massive argument to be had that that is the case, and these people aren't great owners historically, and they've not done brilliantly with any of the football clubs that they've owned. But the reality of the situation is, it looks like they're going to be the new owners of Everton Football Club. As I said, there's a couple of rumours floating around that the takeover could collapse, or it could fall through, or etc. But those rumours are being rubbished fairly quickly, and according to 777, and according to what you're hearing from the football club, everybody seems confident that this will be done. And if you were to ask me now, are you confident that the 777 deal will go through? I would say, yeah, I am confident the 777 deal will go through, because firstly, I don't think these things get to this stage without a huge level of confidence that they will go through. I don't think we'd be sat here, months and months and months down the timeline of 777, attempting to buy Everton if they didn't have the funds to do so. I think it would have been shut down fairly quickly if that was the case, but it's not being shut down, it's continuing. So therefore, there's something that tells you that, there is something there. I also think there's a supreme level of confidence from 777 that this will go through. And I know people will say, but what about this that they've done previously? What about that they've done previously? What about this that they've been in the news for? Which maybe isn't a footballing issue, it's more of a a legal issue, etc., etc. The reality is there's been a lot of football owners that have been passed through Premier League regulations and FCA regulations, etc., etc., that have had pasts that are questionable, but have still been allowed to go on to buy Premier League football clubs. And 777 will not be the first; they'll just be the latest of people to be able to do that. It's frustrating for me, because it's setting a precedent before they've even come through the door. It sort of takes me back to when Farhad Moshiri was announced as Everton's majority shareholder, and there was so much optimism, there was so much hope, there was so much, there was so much ambition and passion and sort of excitement towards the future of the football club. We all genuinely believe, right, okay, this is our time now. This is our time to be able to go and spend a bit of money. And you've got to remember, back then, the Premier League is a huge entity now. You've got teams like Aston Villa, and this is no disrespect to Aston Villa, by the way. Aston Villa are a huge football club, but you've got teams like Aston Villa who, were battling with relegation 4 or 5 years ago. We're flirting with it. Obviously they've gotten a lot better in recent years, but you've got teams like that all of a sudden 4 or 5 years ago were able to spend £100 million in a summer. Teams like Brentford will be able to spend hundreds of millions of pounds, even though they might not do it, they're able to do it. Obviously, you've got Newcastle now with billions of pounds to spend. You've got, Chelsea, who have spent £1 billion. When Everton were taken over by Farhad Moshiri, it wasn't like that. Okay, you still had Chelsea, who were worth hundreds of millions and billions. You still had Man United, Liverpool, etc. But Newcastle weren't in that bracket. Teams like Villa weren't in that bracket. Pretty much every Premier League team now, barring the sides that have put themselves in a financial shit hip like Everton have, a lot of Premier League teams can go out in the summer and spend 60, 70, 80 million pounds on players. That wasn't the case when Farhad Moshiri first walked through the door at Everton Football Club. So there was a genuine level of optimism and a genuine level of ambition that, okay, this is our turn now. The whole conversation was, can we do what Man City have done? Because it was only really Man City that had been there. Chelsea, okay, had been there 20 years prior. But in recency terms, as I said, there was no Newcastle. There was no Villa. There was no, whoever it might be, Forest spending £100 million. There was none of that. There was none of that. The closest thing we'd had was Manchester City, and they'd gone on and to be a huge success, winning league titles, winning FA Cups, etc., etc. So we all looked at Farhad Moshiri's ownership and said, this could be amazing. We could go on to be, champions. We could go on to win trophies. We could go on to be... And if you'd have said to all of us in 2016, you'll be sat there in 2023, Farhad Moshiri will be selling the football club and you will still not have won a single trophy, I think a lot of us would have said, wow, it's got to have taken a monumental fuck up for Everton to be in this position, have this money to spend, have these funds at our availability, whilst a lot of other football clubs haven't got them, and still to fuck it up. And yet we have done that. That's exactly what we've done. And now we're at the stage of getting another new owner. But there isn't that optimism, there isn't that excitement, there isn't that joy, there isn't that sort of looking forward to the future. It's pessimism, it's worry, it's anxiety, it's stress, it's news article about how terrible they are, news article about how Standard Liège fans want them out, news article about how this and that has happened in previous years, etc., etc. And it just leaves us all with a very negative feeling. about the whole situation. And I'm not, by the way, in any way, shape or form saying that 777 are guaranteed to come in and do a great job. I have said before, and I will say it again, and this is an if, because it is possible, but if they somehow come in and do a worse job than what Farhad Moshiri has done, then it is almost, it's almost sort of, you would look at it and go, you know what, fair enough, because it is very, very difficult to have done a worse job than what Farhad Moshiri has done. Farhad Moshiri has destroyed this football club as far as I'm concerned. You can talk about the new stadium all you like and how great it'll be and how boss it looks, etc, etc. On the pitch, Farhad Moshiri has destroyed this football club. It's as simple as that. And if 777 come in and manage to do a worse job than Farhad Moshiri, then they'll have had to have done a pretty bad job. But nobody is looking at it like that. Nobody's looking at it as a case of, well, look what we've just had. This is a fresh start. It's fresh new owners. Hopefully it'll be better. Everybody's just looking at it as, well, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be even worse. Better the devil, and stuff like that. Grass isn't always greener, which it mightn't be. And I'm not saying that 777 will be better than Moshiri, by the way. I'm just saying it's almost like we're not giving them an opportunity to be because of everything that we're reading in the news and in the media. And I'm not saying anybody is wrong for that, by the way. There's reasons for that, and there's very good reasons, and people have got reasons to be stressed and anxious and worried about the future, and I am too. And when you read things like this about 1 minute it's saying the deal could fall through because the funds aren't there, the next minute they're saying no, that's wrong, the deal can't fall through. And if you listen to Julia Bull's obviously documentary on BBC Sounds about Everton, nothing will be the same. You spoke about it last week. There is snippets in that talking about 777 and 777 specifically, sort of talking about a lot of the things that have been written about them and allegations that have been written about them, and saying basically a lot of them are nonsense and a lot of them don't matter and a lot of them aren't of anything of note. But we don't hear that. We don't see the evidence to suggest that the things that are being written on true. We just see the articles stating that this fan base wants them out, that fan base wants them out, etc, etc. And yeah, it's certainly worrying times. But as the moment, as it stands, 777 will be taking over at Everton Football Club. 777 will be the new owners of Everton Football Club, and ultimately, we're there for the ride, aren't we? And we've just got to see what happens. As I said, my stance as an Evertonian is I just want to see Everton winning games of football. If I had my way, I would never talk about the ownership on this YouTube channel. I'd never talk about the finances. I'd never talk about, where Everton were in terms of capital and lending money and loans, etc, etc, because I wouldn't need to, because I'd just be sitting here going, we've won again this week, we're dead boss, right, next game preview, we're probably going to win again because we're dead boss, right, we've won again, we're dead boss. I mean, do Manchester City fan channels sit down and talk about their finances in depth? Maybe, because they've got a bit of an FFP situation going on like ourselves, which we're going to move on to in a moment. But for the majority of their season, they'll just be talking about watching brilliant football and watching their team winning, whereas with Everton, it always feels like the conversation is sort of directed away from what's happening on the pitch, and that shouldn't be the case, but that is the case because of how poor this football club has been ran, and how much of a terrible position this football club is in at the moment. The performances on the pitch are merely an indication of the performances at every other level at the football club. So yeah, it is. It's worrying. It's confusing. It's an anxious time. I get it, but as I said, it looks like the takeover is still on, and it looks like 777 are going to be the new owners of Everton. Eugene says, remember to smash the like button. Cheers, Eugene. Really appreciate it. Everton Azul says, hello, Cam. I need some football in my life. Well, do you know what? I've missed Everton. I have missed Everton. I know they wind me up, and I know they do me head in, and I know it's always nice to have a break, but I'd be lying if I was to say I hadn't missed them a little bit. However, then I remembered that our next game is the Merseyside derby, and I thought, you know what, I could probably have another week off here. I could probably have another couple of days extra here without having to think about Everton. But you know what, that's the way it is, and so be it. So be it. Celtic Babe says, hi Cam, are you biting your nails like me regarding this FFP cap? Well, we're going to move on to it in a moment, and I'll give my opinions on that. Gord says, been a while since I've caught a live stream, but dreading the derby a bit. Do you know what? Again, I've seen so many Merseyside derbies at Anfield. I've watched Everton lose Merseyside derbies, by a bad refereeing decision or by a controversial situation, and I've seen Everton win a Merseyside derby at Anfield, and I've seen Everton lose a lot of derbies where we just have been absolutely battered and we've not been anywhere near as good as Liverpool have. So I suppose we'll just wait and see what happens. John says, when these criminals buy us, you, my friend, are guilty for attacking our board and owners. You have to bear that for the rest of your life. John, you are talking absolute bollocks, mate. You're talking about criminals buying us. The behaviour of our owners and our board members and our chairman has been criminal-like over the last 12 months or so, and certainly over the last 6 or 7 years or so. So even if 777 were to come in, and obviously touch wood this doesn't happen, and touch wood that this never happens, but even if 777 were to come in, make an absolute shit show of this, and Everton were to be relegated and whatever else, I still wouldn't regret campaigning to get Farhad Moshiri, Bill Kenwright, Denise Barrett-Baxendale, etc. out of this football club, because they may have done a better job than the next owners, which they, as I said before, it's pretty difficult for 777 to do a worse job than them. Still doesn't mean that they were doing a good enough job. So, John, I've got a feeling you might be Bill Kenwright under a different account name. Eugene says, Everton sales stalls and make questions about buyers' financial. That, as I said, we've just spoken about. Eugene also says, on a different account, it looks like, I think Qatar owners will buy Everton, the ones that tried to buy Man United. Bloody hell. How good would that be? How good would that be? No, it's unlikely to happen because the 777 thing is so far down the line. Could 77 be backed by the Qatar owners? Who knows? Who knows? I suppose that's just something we'd have to wait and see about. But yeah. Subcam says the Blues. What's happening, my mate? Philip says afternoon Blues. The Blues also says back-to-back snide owners could only happen to Everton, couldn't it? Yeah, of course it could, mate. Celtic Vape says if we come away on the right side of the inquiry, I think there'll be more bidders for the club. Maybe. And the Blues says Moshiri has been terrible, but these guys could come in and sell the likes of Onana, Branthwaite, Pickford, etc. and pocket the money. They look like vultures waiting to peck. Yeah, they could, or they could come in, give us a little bit of an investment in cash and go and strengthen the team. See us go on to go from strength to strength, and who knows, maybe be some form of success. We don't know, do we? There's a lot of. Ultimately, if I was to sit down now with 777 and say, are you going to come into Everton Football Club and sell all of our best players and basically just pocket all of the money and walk away? They'd say, no, of course we're not. So, and I'm not saying fans are wrong for saying that could happen, because it could happen. But ultimately, nobody knows, do we? No, the owners know, but the owners are either going to tell the truth or they're going to lie. And we're not going to know the outcome to that until it's too late. So, the Blues says I did the same process. Can we rewatch the Bournemouth game? Remembered our next fixture and the bubble burst instantly. Yeah. And he also says, wow, what a comment that is. And Peter says 777 partners have outlined their intentions to bring their people in and totally reconstruct the football club. Running of the football club, ensure we can cover the day-to-day expenses. Then once we move, the covers will flow. Well, ultimately, I've heard a number of very intelligent people who know what they're talking about, and know football and know the ins and outs of a lot of football clubs, and they have said that the 777 model is largely come into a football club, make it very self-sustainable so that it can run itself. It can run the day-to-day running of the football club by restructuring various different things and maybe putting various different things in place and then building on that. Now, that for me sounds like the very basic level of what a football club should be and the very base sort of how a football club should be run. But it is exactly what Everton need right now. That is exactly what Everton need. Everton need to be able to run ourselves sufficiently to be able to not have to go and search for £40 million loans in order to pay the wages, or £30 million loans to pay the wages. And then we build on top of that. But maybe some people don't like that. But that is a fact ultimately. Anyway, let's move on to the FFP stuff, because this is also really, really interesting. Miguel Delaney reported today that the FFP hearing on Everton is expected to be settled next Thursday, but is likely that a verdict will be published next month. A guilty verdict for Everton could bring a fine or points deduction, with the latter potentially suspended. What that means is if it is a points deduction, it would more than likely be a suspended points deduction until maybe next season, or it wouldn't be in place straight away, is what it's saying. Yeah, obviously we've known this is coming. Pardon me. We've known that the hearing is coming, the 26th of October, as it states in that tweet or that article. Then it will be a case of waiting for a hearing. Am I worried? No, not particularly, because it's happening. And I think the odds of Everton being guilty are maybe not low. I'm not for a second suggesting, pardon me, that Everton are not guilty. I'm not for a second suggesting that Everton will get away with whatever it is. However, I think the odds of Everton being given a points deduction or a ban or whatever is very unlikely. I think it would probably be a fine of some form. It may be a transfer ban for 6 months or for a year until next summer or until next January, which would be quite detrimental to the football club because we still need to massively strengthen in those windows. But ultimately, we will have to wait and see. The news we've got today is nothing that we didn't know already. We knew that the verdict was supposed to be heard late October, and we all were told quite early on in this process that once that verdict is made, we probably will be waiting another few weeks before we find out what the answer to that is. You know, what ultimately the outcome to that is. There is every chance that Everton are guilty for breaching the rule that we are ultimately under investigation for. What is really interesting is Everton are the first to be investigated about a potential FFP breach. Obviously, Manchester City will follow with a significant more amount of breaches. I think they've got 115 breaches against them or charges against them. And I suppose the outcome of Everton's hearing, whilst it would be individual and whilst they would say this has got nothing to do with the Manchester City situation, this is its own sort of hearing, the reality is whatever punishment Everton are given, Manchester City would likely be given a bigger punishment because they have ultimately breached more rules than what Everton have, and their situation is a lot bigger than Everton's. So if Everton are given a 6 points deduction, Manchester City would likely be given more. I doubt that points deductions will be given out. That's just my opinion. I doubt that points deductions will be given out. I think a hefty fine, if we're found guilty, will be expected. And as I said, it wouldn't surprise me if it was a transfer ban or some form of transfer embargo. I'm not saying for 1 second that I expect that to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all. As in terms of am I worried or concerned or stressed, or I'm not, because whatever we have been accused of doing, we've either done or we haven't done, and if we've done, we will get punished for that. That punishment will be the latest thing in a line of failures from the people at the top of this football club, and if we haven't been guilty, then we will have, ultimately been proven innocent. We will have stuck with everything the club has said over the last year or so when being asked about this, in terms of we've done everything the way we should have done it. I think the Premier League come into question because the Premier League actually ultimately stated that Everton had done everything fine and there was no issues with the way Everton had done their finances or anything like that, so the Premier League would then come into question. Yeah, I think it's definitely one that we will sit down and we will discuss once, ultimately we hear the outcome of the situation and the outcome of the verdict. But until then, what can we say? We can either sit here and say we will be guilty and we will be given a potential points deduction or a potential fine, or we won't be guilty and everything will be okay. But until then, we don't know the answer to that. So yeah, again, this post today just pretty much confirmed that everything is still on track. Everything is still where it should be. And you know, the date is getting ever closer and closer for us to find out ultimately our fate, I suppose, in terms of this situation. We obviously will wait and find out what the outcome is over the next coming weeks or so. But until then, there's not much we can do. Sean Dyche has had this pre-game press conference today. He has spoken about some injury news ahead of Saturday's Merseyside derby. He said Seamus is back on the grass for the first time with us, but he's had 1 day, so he needs time, obviously, after a long period out. Hitting that Seamus Coleman will not be involved on Saturday. I don't think anybody expected them to be. Garner Gay is back fit after a heel issue, and the manager also said that other than other long-term injuries such as Delhi and people like that, there is no other injuries to worry about at the football club. So other than the long-term issues, everything seems to be fairly okay at the moment ahead of a huge game on the weekend. He was speaking about James Garner. He said really happy for Jimmy and his progress. He sees him as a predominantly essential player. He did get that in. He did say specifically, I see him predominantly as a central player. But he likes his versatility. He's growing into a very good player. He had a message to the players. He said, just keep giving the performances for the good habits. He said the Merseyside derby is the biggest derby he knows of. He spoke about Dominic Calvert-Lewin and his impact. We know he is an effective player. We know he is getting back to full fitness and sharpness. So the manager seems to be happy with the squad and happy with ultimately the situations going into the Merseyside derby. As I said, we'll be doing the preview to this game tomorrow, and we'll be talking much more in depth about the game itself and how confident we are or we aren't going into it. And little bits to finish with, which isn't necessarily Everton news. Martin Ziegler reported today that the Premier League sticks to the 3 p.m. Saturday TV blackout, but every other match will be live on television from 2025 to 2028. All 10 matches on the final day of the season will be live on TV. 5 packages instead of 7. So, yeah, there you go. No end to the 3 p.m. blackout, which I still think is an absolute utter disgrace, but I didn't expect anything less, to be fair. So there you go. That is the end of the stream. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Before we go, just one more mention of FanHub. As you can see here, if you go down into the top line of the description, download FanHub for free. Join our community. I want to build a community on this app. I want to get everybody involved. As you can see, a lot of Evertonians already on the app. You can also go to things like leaderboards, and you can see who is top of the leaderboard for mileage in the last 5 games in terms of how far they have travelled. You can go specifically Everton as well, so you can see which Evertonians are top of the leaderboard for season for the last 5 games. Or as I said, if you go all clubs, you can see who's there for 5s, which is their prediction game. I'll show you that now. If you go over to next up, you can predict your 5 fixtures there, and obviously you will get points based upon them to win prizes as well. Predict the lineup will be coming up in tomorrow's Merseyside derby preview, so don't forget to look out for that one. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed this, please do leave a like. It does only take a second if you are new to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Go and check out FanHub. Use that code in the description below to get on and get joining our community. And yeah, big thanks for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you later.